as I mentioned, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. And I'd like to welcome you to the 40th anniversary of the Macedonian Cultural and Artistic Association, Sandanski. And before we commence tonight's proceedings, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. My name is Alex Stojchevsky.
And I'm Anna Tsakovska.
And we'll be your Masters of Ceremonies for tonight. So to begin, I'd like to go through a brief history of how our association started 40 years ago. So the date was May 20th, 1982, when 8 enthusiastic Macedonians met at 8 Carbine Way, Keilor Downs. This was where our founding members, Blagoje Mitrevski, Celia Latomanski, Blagoje Smilevski, Tode Milenkovski, Blagoje Božinovski, Alekso Bojovski, Zlatko Božinovski, and Robert Butrakovski met for the first time to discuss creating a new Macedonian dancing group in St Albans. Within a few weeks, the first training session was held in early June 1982. Too loud? At the school hall at St Albans Primary School on Kate Street. Fast forward 40 years and our current dancers are also training in the exact same hall where it all began 40 years ago. The first group of dancers to train in June of 1982 were Emica Bojovska, Elizabeth Mitrevski, Žaklina Latomanska, Biljana Milenkovska, Tetjana Smilevska, Ilcho Mitrevski, Georgi Smilevski, and Sasho Smilevski, with the svirači Celi Latomanski, Zlatko Božinovski, and Robert Butrakovski.
From humble beginnings, the group went from strength to strength during the mid to late 80s, and the group embarked on their first overseas tour to Macedonia in 1989. The group continued their success in the early 90s and grew to over 300 members. The group once again toured Macedonia in 1997, 2007 and 2012, and the most recent tour of Japan in 2017. The group has also participated in the annual Sandanski Festival, organised by the Federation of Macedonian Cultural and Artistic Associations of Victoria, with numerous first place awards. The group has also toured domestically, performing in Sydney, Wollongong, Adelaide, Canberra, Gold Coast and Perth, and has hosted many local and international groups and renowned singers from Macedonia. The success and longevity of the group is a massive undertaking, which would not be possible without a dedicated team of committee members, choreographers and parents working behind the scenes to ensure our dancers had the best possible experience while representing our rich Macedonian culture.
And now we would like to acknowledge the sacrifices, hard work and contributions the following members have made to the Macedonian Cultural and Artistic Association, Sandanski, and honour them with life membership. So for those that are here, if you could please come forward to receive your life membership award. So start off with our founding members. So Blagoje Mitrevski, Celi Latomanski, Žaklina, if you'd like to, Blagoje Smilevski, Tode Milenkovski, Biljana, if you're around, if you'd like to come forward. So I had the honour of actually meeting Tode. I'd like to honour him with life membership. I know he was already a life member, but we'd like to recognise that his outstanding effort is still remembered to this day. Along with that, we've also got Blagoje Božinovski, Alekso Bojovski, Zlatko Božinovski and Robert Butrakovski. And continuing on, we'd also like to invite Chris Mitrevski, Trajče Atanasovski, Jovanče Spasevski, Koče Stojchevski, Romeo Georgiev as former presidents of Sandanski, and Romeo, our current president. We'd also like to continue with Kiro Dimkovski and Krste Nečovski, to Duško Stojčevski as well, Gocija Đioski, Nikola Gašovski, and Snežana Talevska. So yes, Snežana, I had the honor of working with her, and I went over on Tuesday night to actually get a bit more history, and all the photos that you see behind us today were all donated by to the Snežana. And Susie, if you'd like to, yes, please. Yeah. Yeah, congratulations to our life members. Thank you for all your hard work. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for you guys and all your hard work over the past 40 years, so thank you. And further to that, we'd also like to acknowledge and thank the following individuals for their significant contribution over the years to MKUD and Sandanski, and welcome on stage as well to receive an award of an appreciation for all their hard work to Slobode Vidanovski, Steve Talevski, Zvonko Trajkovski, Goce Nečovski, Steven Boševski, Jagoda Đioska, Milena Stojčevska, Zora Nikolovska, Lydia Vidanovski, Valentina Talevski, and Jackie Trajkovski. So normally the committees are very male dominated, but we also wanted to recognize all the wives, the mothers, the sisters who are always behind the scenes. They're making, kebapi, helping with shami, with, everything else that needs to be done for this group to be a success. So we wanted to thank them as well. We'd also like to thank Slavka Nečovska, who has worked tirelessly to make our new shirts for our senior group and assisting with just general repair of all our costumes. Also Valentina Dmitrievska and Gordana Georgieva and Snežana Banovska, if you could all come forward if you're not helping with the costumes upstairs already. They have worked tirelessly to prepare new costumes and make sure that all our dancers have a costume of their own. So I'd like to thank all of them. Zate be, ajde. Yeah, Valentina Dmitrievska. Tina. We'd also like to thank Zlatan Torn, our band for tonight, who have, over the last 6 weeks, been attending training with our alumni in preparation for tonight's event. So we'd like to thank Peter Cepovirovski, Nick Cepovirovski, Robert Grozdanovski, Bonnie Jovanovski, Bill Pashovski, Lukcho Ristanovski, and Ilya Altanjiev. So if you'd like to come forward, we've also got awards for you guys as well. And we'd also like to thank our previous choreographers of our senior groups for their hard work and dedication with the senior groups over the past 40 years. So we'd like to thank Boris Stojkovski. And if you'd like to come up, we've also got awards for you guys as well. Tome Velevski, Mitko Alexov, Tony Yovchevsky, Lou Lazarevsky, Stoiche Karamfilov, Koche Stoichevsky, Jovan Chespasevsky, and Marian Hristovsky. Yeah, a round of applause for all our choreographers. Without their dedication, our seniors would not be where they are today, so thank you to all of them.
Tonight wouldn't be possible without the hard work and dedication from our choreographers who are tirelessly working each week. We'd like to take this opportunity to thank our current choreographers. That's Jessica Markovsky and Isabella Talevsky with the junior group, Kristina Kristanovsky with the middle group, and of course Alex Stoichevsky for our senior A and B.
We'd also like to thank our previous choreographers from 2020 and 2021 for all their hard work and flexibility during the pandemic. So Vanessa Nikolovska, Tanya Vidanovsky, Anna Chakovska, and Marian Hristovsky. If you'd like to come to the front of the stage and receive an award as well.
Tonight could also not be possible without the hard work and dedication from the committee. We'd like to thank our members, our president, Romeo Georgiev, our vice president, Nikola Gashovsky, our secretary, Alex Stoichevsky, our treasurer, Steven Nikolovsky, our vice treasurer, Tony Ristevsky, our vice secretary, Tanya Ristevska, and our general committee member, Gordana Georgiev. A round of applause for our committee members. Thank you.
And I'd like to personally thank Tsele Latomansky, Jacqueline Stoikovska, Boris Stoikovsky, and Snezhna Talevska, and their families for welcoming me into their homes over the past couple of weeks in preparation for tonight's event, and basically giving me a crash course on how the group started and where it all began. So I want to thank them personally for all their help and support over the past couple of weeks in preparation for tonight.
We'd also like to thank the following: Steve Iliovsky from Silly Designs for designing our new logo for our 40th anniversary and advertising for tonight's event. For all your graphic design needs, find Silly Designs on Instagram and Facebook. We'd also like to thank Mel and Zoran Korunovsky from Light Up Events for the wonderful displays around the room. For all of your event needs, please find Light Up Events online.
We'd also like to thank Maya Kotevsky from Lux of Aurora for creating our welcome sign in the foyer this evening. If you're looking for any Christmas ideas or gifts, look her up on Instagram and Facebook. It's Lux of Aurora. We'd also like to thank our videographer Goran from Provision for tonight. And we'd also finally like to thank Luxor Receptions for providing us with this exceptional venue to hold this prestigious event, and allowing us to hold training in preparation for tonight's program.
Tonight you will see performances from all of our 4 current groups of Janez Sandanski, as well as a special performance from our alumni dancers.
So I've had the pleasure and great honour of working with and getting to know our former dancers over the past 3 months, who have sacrificed so much to perform with us tonight. From watching videos of them dance at the Sandanski festivals throughout the 80s and 90s, it's been an amazing experience putting names to the faces that inspired me to continue what I love doing. They have set the standards very high for our current dancers and have inspired us to be better every day. We would like to thank the following alumni dancers: Jovan Spasevski, Goce Nechovski, Steve Boshevski, Steven Nikolovski, Snežana Banovski, Julice Pevirovski, Aneta Petkovski, Elizabeth Lazarkov, Diana Tanevski, Suza Jankulovska, Biljana Trenevska, Vesna Petrovska.
Also Tanya Vidanovski, Daniela Gioska, Kristina Kristanovska, Amy Sojanovska, Maria Agiovska, Jasmine Yotevski, Sonia D'Angelo, Miki Oposolovski, and also along with some of our members from our senior group, Tony Ristevski, Christian Lazarevski, Alex Stoichevski, and Marko Gashovski.
A big round of applause for our alumni dancers who will be performing later this evening. Now we would like to welcome our previous presidents to say a few words. So if you please join me in welcoming our former president from the mid-80s to the early 90s, Mr. Chris Mitrevski, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special night. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. For new generation, a lot of people that don't know me, I'm Chris Mitrevski, long-time president of this organization and life member. And thank you very much for the committee, new committee, for inviting me tonight to be president on this special night, 40th anniversary. And I appreciate very much, and I wish them all the best, good luck, and I hope they're going to keep going forever. Good work. I appreciate all the members, all the parents and dancers for hard work in difficult time and new generation. Good luck again, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And next we'd like to invite long-serving president as well, Mr. Traice Atanasovski, to say a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, dancers from the most beautiful and most recognized artistic association, Janez Sandanski from St. Albans, committee, and everybody that have helped to get to this stage, 40 years anniversary. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to say a few words about our former president that was here, Chris Mitrevski, koji работеше тежко, of course, сите работиме тежко, но тој го почна убавиот темел на ова друштво, а јас понатамо продолжив. Заедно со сите вас, вашата работа, го подкрепивме ова убаво друштво да дојде до овој момент. Успеси големи, се разбира и председателот сега што е управата, ќе ви кажат за понамошните работи, но работите што се направи до сега се одлични и сте многу задоволни. Уште еднаш да ве поздравам сите вас, ви посакам пријатна вечер и убави моменти со нашите играорки и играоци од Македонското културно друштво Janez Sandanski од St. Albans. Благодарам.
And up next, we'd like to invite Jovan Spasevski to say a few words, our former president.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I've got a short 45-minute speech prepared for tonight with a few PowerPoint slides, so can I please get you to turn your attention? No, I don't. I'm just joking. Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to this very special celebration, the 40-year anniversary of the Macedonian Cultural and Artistic Association, Jana Sandanski. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces gathered in one place this evening. Faces that featured so prominently throughout my youth, throughout my teenage years, and also throughout my adult life. Faces that are overwhelmingly associated with such happy and positive memories. My association with Jana Sandanski started way back in 1985. I was a dancer first, then a choreographer, vice president, and then I had the privilege of being the president of this magnificent association up until 2010. And I had great role models to look up to, two of whom you've just witnessed here this evening, Ico Mitrevski and Trajce Atanasovski. Thank you very much to the both of you for your service over the years to this great organisation. Over the years, those years were marked with multiple trips interstate. Had the privilege of performing in Macedonia in 1997. It was fantastic to be able to perform at Rod Laver Arena, but my highlight was performing at a bus depot in West Footscray. It's a great occasion, that one. And nights like these are exactly what Jana Sandanski is all about. Being part of Jana Sandanski was and still is a celebration of youth, because let me tell you, squatting when you're 45 isn't as easy as it used to be. A celebration of friendship. So many of my closest friendships were forged during my time at Jana Sandanski. And it's also a celebration of culture and identity, and remaining true to who we are so that our unique culture can last for decades to come. Everyone has worked hard behind the scenes to make this night a reality, but I wanted to make special mention of our wonderful MC, Alex Stojčevski. A round of applause for Alex, everybody. Alex demonstrated the patience of a saint, the hard work, dedication and commitment to whip us pensioners into shape for our performance later on. Alex, for that we are eternally grateful, and I'm really honoured for the recognition that you've shown not only me, but everybody else here this evening. Finally, thank you to my fellow alumni dancers for showing up to training every week, for battling through the sore joints. Every week was such a positive experience. Your attitude was tremendous, and we were treating this evening like we were performing at the Ilindensko Denovi, the dancing competitions. And so reconnecting with people I hadn't seen for many years was awesome. And I hope that each of you take the opportunity this evening to reconnect and say hello to people, to friendly faces with whom you haven't connected for many years, even decades. And let's make sure this celebration is memorable. And I look forward to 2062 when we have our 80-year anniversary and we're all sitting around here celebrating and enjoying another wonderful occasion. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.
Thank you, Jovanče. And now we'd like to call upon our former president and long-term choreographer from 1998 to 2005, and again from 2012 to 2018, Mr. Trajce Stojčevski, please.
Dobro večer do sите prisutni. Teško je da se zborува posle Jovanče, тој рече че зборува 45 минути, јас 1 сат сигурно. И навистина после таков оратор тешко е да се најдат зборови да се опишат чувства. Како прво дозволете ми од моје име да им честитам на сите членови на Јане Сандански јубилејот 40 години од постоењето, тоест од формирањето, да им посакам се најдобро во иднина и уште многу пати вака да се собираме. Како прво би се навратил на тие 40 години назад. Мислам дека група ентузијасти ни самите не знаеле каква улога ќе одиграат во значањето на друштвото и сето она што ќе го направи во следните 40 години. Тие биле зачетокот на едно од најголемите друштва кој што екзистира во Австралија. друштво кое што несебично е негува македонската култура. Да се разбериме. Велат дека иднина нема без минато. Нашиот народ би било исто така без минатото како дрво без корен. А нашето минато го презентираме преку нашата култура, народното творештво, народни приказни, игри, песни. Така зачетокот пред 40 години, оние неколкумина кои што се собрале пред се поради носталгија и илјадници километри далеко од својот роден крај да запеат, да заиграат македонски. Затоа ве молам и апелирам до сите вас присутни, како што тоа го правеа генерации наназад, да продолжиме со истото темпо. Ние, родители, баби и дедовци, да ги охрабриме нашите деца, да се приклучат кон друштвото, да кажат по некој збор македонски, да заиграат наше оро. Затоа што тука се појавува и првата симпатија, тука се појавува и првата љубов. Мислам, навистина пред толкав аудиториум е тешко да се најдат зборови, затоа нема да ве мачам повеќе. Уште еднаш посакувам друштвото да постои уште многу, многу години. Јане Сандански сме сите ние тука. Благодарам.
Thank you, Koche. And last but not least, we'd like to welcome our current president since 2015, Mr. Romeo Georgiev.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this marvelous occasion, the 40-year anniversary of Jane Sandanski. 7 or 8 years ago, when I was invited to the annual general meeting, I was just come over, see how we're going, and Koche and Dushko nominated me as president, so here I am, and I'm standing here before you, humbled and proud of Jane Sandanski, what they've achieved in the past 40 years. Over the past 4 decades, Jane Sandanski has firmly established itself as one of the best Macedonian traditional dancing community groups in Victoria. It has produced generations of amazing dancers, learning our culture and tradition through our music. I've been part of Jane Sandanski for nearly 30 years, so I was part of one of the groups as a musician when I was 18 years old, and some years later we returned with our 3 kids back into the Jane family. I've always carried the passion for Macedonian music, and therefore stand here proud to be part of this amazing cultural artistic group, Jane Sandanski. I'd like to thank our committee, our choreographers, all the members, and of course the parents for supporting this dancing group and allowing their kids to continue learning our Macedonian traditional dancing and be proud of who we are. Also, I would like to thank the past presidents, committee members, and everybody that's helped and has been part of this group for the past 40 years. 40 years is a long time, so we apologise if we have left anybody out. So from the bottom of our hearts, we apologise if we've left any members and haven't mentioned you tonight. 40 years is a long time, and we can't remember everybody unless we are told. A Macedonian dancing group, the Jane Sandanski is a Macedonian dancing group that will last for generations. 40 years is a milestone, and it will carry on that journey that our first founders have started. On this happy occasion, may I therefore join you all in wishing Jane Sandanski on the 40th anniversary every success in his future endeavours. I thank you for your attention, and as you know, the last 4 to 6 months have been pretty hard preparing for tonight. And a few minutes ago, we announced live members. But there's one member in particular that we didn't announce, and I'd like to acknowledge him, and that's Alex Lojewski. He's not only a choreographer, he's our secretary, a dancer, and everything above. So Alex, congratulations, well done for all your hard work. Doesn't go unnoticed, and we'd like to present a little gift for you as well. One more round of applause for Alex, please. Thank you, that was all from me. Enjoy your night. We're going to start with dancing performances shortly. So enjoy your entree and we'll get back to you shortly. Thank you. Turn your attention to the dance floor, and I'd like to introduce our first performance tonight from our senior A group with a dance called Radoviški Sobor, choreographer Alex Lojewski. Round of applause please for our senior A group. Dragi gosti, Jane Sandanski. Ladies and gentlemen, our second performance is going to be from our senior B group with the dance Žatvarka and Rastak, choreographer Alex Stojevski. Round of applause for our senior B group. Ladies and gentlemen, the senior B group. Round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to now invite our junior group. They're going to be dancing Kutsano and Crnogorka. Choreographers Jessica Markovsky and Isabella Talevsky. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our juniors, please. Dragi gosti, golem aplauz za malata grupa na Jane Sandanski. Ladies and gentlemen, the junior group of Jane Sandanski. That was the little kucano, they're gonna dance one more. Dance, and that is Crna Gorka. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for juniors. This is the future of Jane Sandanski. One more round of applause, please. Next, we have our middle group who will be dancing Kichica and Marica, choreographer Kristina Krstanovska. Round of applause for our middle group. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our middle group. Our next performance is going to be danced by our former dancer, Christy Dimitrievski. She'll be performing tonight in honor of her mother, who was a long-time supporter of the Macedonian dance and folk, working with MKUD visit in Geelong and supporting Christy during her time there and also here at Sandanski. She'll be performing Planinal Pirin with Alex Stoichevsky and support from our senior A group dancers. Round of applause please for Christy and Alex. round of applause, please. Once more for Christy Dimitrievska and Alex Stojanski. Our next performance is going to be from our senior A group. The dance is Pesni I Ora od Pirinska Makedonia. Choreographer Alex Stojanski. Round of applause for our senior A group, please.
Oh
Ladies and gentlemen, the senior group, Sandanski. One more round of applause, please. Tonight, we have a special dance, a dance from our alumni. They got together, they trained hard. These are dancers from the 90s, 2000s, current. A lot of chefs call their main dish a signature dish. But this is Sandanski's signature dance. So, we'd like to welcome the alumni. They are going to dance. Sandanski choreographers Alex Stoichevsky and Lou Lazareski. The dance will be played live by our band Zlatan Ton. Round of applause, please. We can't hear you. A bit louder. Ladies and gentlemen, Janez Sandanski alumni. One more round of applause, please. Dragi gosti, 40 godini, Janez Sandanski. Još jedan golem aplauz. All the dancers can join them. All the dancing group dancers, please join the dance floor. Ladies and gentlemen, you can join in the dance floor with the dancers. Let's fill up this dance floor.
сива падна, по нашите пътеки, и нема веќе ставки, познати чекори, нема ни нежни зборови, зрели пак нежи. Некогаш што ја чуеш, она нашата, заиграј пушти срце, крени ја чашата. Јас морам сам да одам со своите немири, ти беше добра била, така и остани.
čuvam